I always like to have a little intro. I put this on the screen just to remember, so I know where everyone's from, kind of where your perspective is, if you've used demographics, if you use the app. I put some polling questions out there. If you didn't, not a problem. We're still going to cover it in the session. But what we're going to do is say our name, the ministry that we're at, our vocation. If you've used the demographics, how you might have used them. And then the other is what other questions you might have. I've got a bunch of slides. We're going to talk about that. Please, if you have questions as I go along, I tend to talk really fast. Slow me down. Raise your hand. Interrupt me. You won't offend me. So let's get started. So again, I'm Diana Raasch. I am with Lutheran Church Extension Fund. Let's stop there. How many have heard of LCEF before? Awesome. You made my day. My ministry is here for the church to support the efforts of our churches, our RSOs, and our church workers to care for all of the above. So we provide all kinds of resources for the church, big C. I've used demographics a lot. I've had a few roles now with LCEF. I was a district vice president for just shy of 10 years, which meant I got to go around my district, which is South Wisconsin District, and got to visit pastors and principals and a bunch of lay leaders as they were looking to strategize or send out mailings or build or whatever. So there's all kinds of information that we're going to glean from demographic reports today. But the one thing I want you to take away right away is in all of your districts, you have what's called the DVP, a district vice president. And if you don't know who that person is, I will help you find out who your person is afterwards. I'm going to show you a map, and it's on the website for LCF as well. But I want you to get to know your district vice president because this is a resource that things like the demographics are all free for the church. So we are here to serve you. So let's start right here. You want to give us your name and the ministry that you assist or serve at?
My name is Susan Heimbach, and I'm at BLC Lutheran in Jacksonville, Florida.
Wonderful.
And I'm,
Can't hear back here.
Oh, she's at BLC? Oh, yeah, thank you.
yeah. I mean, I really don't have a role other than attending and doing things.
Well, I bet you volunteer.
Yes,
That's
I'm
a big part.
volunteer.
Thank you.
Vic Techmeyer, retired pastor chaplain from Wisconsin.
Leah Broman from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm helping Lutheran schools who want to take on the classical model of education.
One more, looking into that, yes. Yes, sir.
My name is Chuck, and I'm from Massachusetts, and I'm just a lay member learning.
Don't say just. Don't say just. That's a big part. Yes, ma'am.
Dawn Lindsay from San Diego, and I'm part of a merging Lutheran Mission Society of San Diego. We're just starting, so we're trying to figure out all the information we can about how to do mission work in that area.
This will be a very apropos workshop for you.
Becky, I work in missions and outreach in Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Marilyn Magnuson, we met a few years ago. I live in Holman, Wisconsin.
Oh.
I'm a lay person who my husband and I have found that God called us there 6 years ago because we are supposed to start a school there.
I remember you.
Yeah.
Yes, we had a workshop in your area and from the district office.
Well, we went to your area.
Okay.
It was at a district meeting
Okay.
that we met. But Chris, we're working with Chris.
Chris Cody,
and,
Dr.
yeah,
Chris Cody.
and Nathan Mater, and
Yep.
trying to see what we can do to put a school in our
And I'm glad you said that because your mission exec and your education exec in your district are also great resources for you. So thank you for sharing that.
Jim Hack, I'm associate pastor at Beautiful Savior Lutheran in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
And we've used LCEF in terms of demographics to look into planting multi-sites, and we're launching a new church, and we've done some Hispanic ministry and some other outreach activities.
Great.
And we were married at Beautiful Savior 49 years ago.
Oh, we are so connected in the Lutheran Church, are we not? Awesome.
I'm Jill Boyle. I'm from Alive in Christ Lutheran in Tucson.
Okay.
We meet at a school, and we just changed schools, so we're trying to reach out
Awesome.
to, the students, the parents, and all that. And
You're gonna like mailing lists.
we're trying to do that.
I'm Michelle Jacobson from Desert Foothills Lutheran Church here in Scottsdale.
Okay.
And I'm the office administrator there.
You run the show.
Some say that, some not. No, I'm kidding. But we have not used the demographics.
Okay, you probably will.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I'm Kim Schauer. I'm a middle school teacher at Rochester Central Lutheran in Rochester, Minnesota.
Very good.
Becky Gustafson. I teach 5th grade at RCLS in Rochester, Minnesota.
Sounds good.
Mark Lang, I'm the recently retired executive director at Holy Cross in Fort Wayne, sort of transitioned to a part-time role. Your ear should have been burning because your name came up in a meeting with TJ Maddock and some other, we're working with Real Estate Solutions. and some
Oh,
other
fabulous,
folks,
yes.
And we were just comparing and talking notes and stuff because we're working on sort of a project in that way, but this sort of hit.
Good, good, good. Yes, ma'am.
Molly Gobbles from Redeemer Lutheran in Rochester, Minnesota. I'm on a ministry team currently serving and trying to determine what to do with an inherited church. We planted a mission congregation 50-some years ago, and that church, it's still within Rochester, but it has since closed and was deeded back to us. And so it's in a different area of town, and we've had all kinds of, what should we do with this? And so we're just looking to follow God.
I will give you a name from Real Estate Solutions that will be very helpful for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Margie Kessler from Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, and I'm a volunteer and recently on alert.
Sure. Alert training. Absolutely. God bless you for doing that. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Cheryl Peel, and I'm really in limbo. I moved from Southern California last year to the Dallas area.
Okay.
So I'm looking for a new church there.
Well, I bet you'll meet some people from Dallas here. I bet you if you look on the list.
I've been church hopping.
That's okay. Yes, ma'am.
I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm visiting the natives here.
Ah.
I'm Catholic, and I currently just joined a new parish, so I don't have a ministry right now. We'll work on it.
That's what friends are for, right?
They know you're not doing anything, they'll find out. My name is Janet Beester. I live in Mesa, Arizona. My husband, about 19 years ago, started a ministry called We Care Ministry. We visit people in hospitals, nursing homes, help plan funerals, work with funeral directors, whatever in that area we need. So we've done that for a long time. Good time for you.
Thank you. She about covers everything. My name is Bill Beester, and I have two bosses. One's up here, and one's down here.
Got everything covered then. Perfect.
Steve Martin's in Nashville, Tennessee, at Our Savior Lutheran Church. My present, many roles over the years, but my own right now is I'm chairman of the board for our preschool daycare academy.
Fabulous. Gentleman in the back.
Uh-oh. What are we doing?
Notice he's got a LCF shirt on. One of my colleagues. Your name, your vocation, the like.
Long time listener, first time caller.
Right.
My name's TJ. I'm actually the district vice president for the Indiana district for Lutheran Church Extension Fund. So I do some of this as well, but I'm curious to see how she presents it.
When I was a DVP, I still kind of sort of am, long story. TJ's my peer mentor when it comes to the banking side of what LCEF does. One more gentleman at the back. My husband's a pastor. My husband's supporting me at this workshop, Randy Raasch from First Emmanuel Cedarburg. So.
And I use demographics a lot.
Yes. So I sent the poll out for those of you that saw that. So what Randy just said, we'll kind of get into that. If you have stories, again, feel free to interrupt, and we can talk about how everyone uses them. So what is Lutheran Church Extension Fund? Again, there's some PR pieces, that burgundy color piece on the front there, on the seats, that kind of highlights our investments, ministry solution, real estate solutions, loan solutions. I think probably what we're best known for is supporting the church, big C, when it comes to taking care of congregations, but then to take care of all of our teachers and our pastors and DCEs and the like. That's what we're best known for. My favorite we have a few taglines, but the tagline in the box here is my favorite because that's what it's all about. Over in the far right, where LCF is where investments build ministry. So I'm not going to sell you anything today, but we have investors that love what we do in that area, but most importantly, they love to support those of us that work in the church, pastors and all the volunteers, because you too are making a difference in the congregation. So, as I just said, we take care of our church workers, our congregations, all of our schools, all of our Concordia schools in the university system, as well as RSOs or, the Concordias are RSOs, but then we have Lutheran homes, we have things like that that are connected. So those are all areas we get to serve. Where should we always start? We should start in the Bible, I believe. I had a few colleagues that gave us this slide and the next two, so I thought it was appropriate. So we always start with prayer. As you work in your congregation, please look at some of these verses. And by the way, all of the slides are downloadable. So Best Practices has these slides, and you can take these back home with you. Again, other Bible verses that talk about going out into the world. This is a slide, I don't know, probably pastors and maybe some of the teachers in the room have seen this. All churches, there's a church cycle. There's a lot of churches that were back in biblical times that are no longer here. So it's not a negative, but there is a life circle or life cycles for congregations. So when a congregation or a school or an RSO will ask for a demographic, there's a variety of different reports. These are just a few of them. There's a quick insight report, and basically just what the name says, it's a snapshot. Just grab that quick bite of information, executive insight, full insight. Each one further down will go into more information. From those, we get infographics, which I believe are the best reports. So ask your DVP about infographics, because then you see the data with the pictures. We're visual learners. And the mailing list. As I mentioned, the mailing lists are very helpful. The information from the reports are given to you in a mailing list, which is a simple Excel document. So you're able to see who's living where, whatever. So the biggest question I have for a ministry when they ask for the reports are, what do you want? And they'll say, I don't know what I want. Basically, is it a zip code? Is it a certain mile radius? Or a grouping of zip codes? Or a polygon? So again, I'm in South Wisconsin District in the Milwaukee area. We've got a number of city churches. If they say I want a 2-mile or a 5-mile radius, part of that is going to be in Lake Michigan. So you in that case, we could easily draw a polygon. And what I mean by that is give me a north, a south, east, and west road. And it doesn't have to be a box or an exact shape. It can be a squiggly line. But give your district vice president exactly what you want. In the case of the 2 blocks or 1 mile, again, that might be for our city congregations. In Milwaukee, we have a number of congregations, actually in Sheboygan area as well. We have a number of congregations that are very close to each other. But in the good old German days, you walked to church. So there were a lot of churches clustered in areas. That's why the 2 blocks or the 1 mile or whatever. The 10 mile, I have some that have asked for 10 or 20 miles. The problem with the 10 and beyond, you're going to get a whole lot of data. And to run a report, you can do that, but to get a mailing list, many times it will crash. So we just do different things when it comes to those larger lists. So a lot of times with our demographic reports, these are the things we tend to see. What are the trends? What are the needs in your area? When it comes to the age, one of my churches recently wondered, why is enrollment down? They hadn't looked at a demographic report. Well, the school age demographic in that same certain mile radius, the bubble is down. But you'll see trends from the future coming up of what there might be. You can also see the homes that have children in them, if you have a school or your youth group or whatever. Single-parent households. When I was growing up, I had a cousin, female cousin, that got divorced, and it was, wow, she's divorcing. You know, it was really scary thing back then. You know, we're seeing now that's not such a big deal anymore. There are more and more families, unfortunately, impacted by that. But what I've seen in my district, families with dad raising the children is on the rise. And it's not just in the city. It's in some of the rural areas. So what that tells you is that not a way to reach out to some of those families. Because, you know, Randy and I were blessed. We've been married almost 40 years now. I don't know what that's like. I know what it was like to raise 2 daughters with a spouse, but I can't imagine what it's like to raise kids on my own. Reaching out to single parents is a big deal, especially if you have a school, because you're already taking care of these families. There's some things you can do. Diversity. The reports will detail it, but the mailing list will actually show you the household that might have an ethnic group that you're trying to reach out. In Milwaukee, we have a few Hmong congregations. In Sheboygan, we have a few Hmong congregations. So sometimes you can figure out where they're living and send them, you know, a welcome letter or an invite to some event. And then the big need now is poverty. Again, in any demographic that I've served, one of the last parts of the Quick Insight Report will show you the number of households that are below the poverty level. Now, each region, that level will be different. Your DVP will be able to help you with that. But it'll show you a percentage. Recently, I ran one, and it was 4%. And we think, oh, that's not too bad. But that 4% was almost 1,200 households. Not people, but households. So again, another way to reach out. If you're doing a food pantry or you assist another congregation with food pantry or some other outreach, that's a great way. We have a church in the Beloit area that was housing a food pantry, but they're looking into refurbishing part of their basement to also put showers in. Because the homeless, they need the food, but they don't have a place to, sounds sad to say, but they don't have a shower. So that congregation is looking into doing that. Any questions? Again, stop me if you need anything. Okay. The mailing lists. Every January, those of you in schools, this is nothing new, but I have a number of principals, late December, early January, say, I'm ready for my mailing list. And what that means is it's open enrollment time. You're hearing it in your church. You know, it's time to register for preschool. It's time to register the kids for middle school. But do your neighbors know you have a school? Maybe not. They know you're a church, but they may not see your playground in the background. Yes, ma'am?
Now, does that list include people that are homeschooling too? Are those identified?
It's not yet, but with the rise in homeschooling, I bet at some point it will. But there's some new things coming in the districts regarding homeschool parents, where some churches are taking their Sunday school rooms. A lot of us grew up and you had Sunday school, and now Sunday school rooms might be sitting vacant. We've got some congregations that are helping families that homeschool to gather together to do STEM classes or art classes or even PE classes. So again, another way to reach out for those doing homeschooling. A lot of times there's a lot of connectivity in your community about the families that do homeschooling. So, you know, it's not just the pastor and the lay leaders, your school principals, your youth directors, because the mailing list will tell you the age of groups, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. But it's a great way to reach out to families. When's the last time you invited your neighbors for Lent or Advent or an open house? This same congregation that I talked about looking to maybe refurbish their basement with showers is without a pastor right now, and they're getting ready to call someone. I said, why not have an open house? Because I'm sure there's members that know you're that church, but they've never seen the inside. But then you're saying, welcome to the neighborhood, pastor. We're so glad you're here. But then people see pastor's face, and you reach out to them and just say, hey, we're here. Here's pastor. This is what he looks like. Here's his phone number. Here's the office number. If you ever need anything, let us know. I'm probably older than some of you in the room. Do you remember welcome wagons? Okay, nodding of heads here. So welcome wagon, for those of you that haven't heard of that, is when a family moved in, surprised there'd be a basket or a bag of goodies. In that bag of goodies used to also be a congregational list. Probably you're not seeing too much of that anymore. But that doesn't mean you can't be the welcome wagon person or congregation or school. So in the mailing list and the report, it'll tell you how many people have recently moved in. Is it 0 to 6 months? Is it 9 to 12 months? 2 to 4 years? Whatever. In any case, as you study these reports, you can figure out what might we do to reach out for Lent that's coming up in a few weeks, or welcome wagon. This is a great way to do just a first little initiative. The outreach projects, as I mentioned, if you look at your reports and you see that there is a need in the area of single parents. We have a congregation in Milwaukee that they have a long-standing event they call First Fridays. And they have those Sunday school rooms, and they have a lot of space inside and outside. And they offer, free of charge, mind you, an opportunity to go and drop the kid or a whole group of kids off. Mom and dad get to go, or single parent, by the way, get to go out and have some one-on-one time. But then they get to feed the young kids, probably have a movie, kind of like a mini Sunday school VBS on the first Friday. Which then, think about this, impacts your VBS, because in the summer or whenever you might do Vacation Bible School, you have that list of names. I'm going to stop there for a second. One encouragement, I talked about the QR code on these cards. If those of you that walked in, chance to win a $100 Visa gift card. But if you have an event in Word, you can build like a sign-up form or a drawing form, or just, put it on your website, because they're not going to come inside your door to sign up. They're going to sign up on your website. Use a QR code. Ask them how they would like to be, how they would like their acknowledgement. We got your registration. Is it via a cell phone number? Is it via an email address? The whole point there is then you can thank them for coming, but then as you have your next event, encourage them to come again. But again, at every event, make sure that you have pastor there, or pastor's picture there, or principal there, so that they see the professionals. The administrator that runs the office, they need to know you and your phone number. The QR codes, again, you can easily do that on a Word document.
I have something.
Yes, ma'am.
A while back, my husband and I were traveling to Colorado, and we were visiting a church for the first time while we were on vacation. And as we came out, you talked about the welcome wagon. Well, we went up to it, and what they gave us, and I always remember this, they gave us a little package of popping corn with a card on it with the pastor's name and the church times, and it just said, thanks for popping in. And I just think that was the cutest, inexpensive way to just, so you take the popcorn home and you pop it and you think about, I got it at the church, and it's just a simple way of kind of welcoming people who are here.
And they'll always remember that, right?
I always remember that, because it was
Popping
just
in.
like very inexpensive way to let people know that.
Anybody else have an outreach project that they would like to share? Yes, ma'am.
I've seen a church, my daughter's congregation, where they have bags that you can take to be able to hand out to the homeless, which is growing in their area that they live in as a kind of an outer urban city. and they've got warm socks in there and like a can of sardines or tuna. So it's very practical things, but then along with the gospel. And it's for their congregation members to take so that they can give it out to that person they see on the corner and build relationship.
Yep, because sometimes giving them money isn't the best
Right.
thing. They may need food. Socks are the big thing for the homeless in the wintertime, absolutely. Other projects. Okay. I think when I show you some examples, that's when you'll see some more questions. Okay, here's an example of the mailing list that you'll get. So if you look up here, I mentioned Randy and I live in Cedarburg, so I just took a report that I ran for my church and school. Here's another example. This, I think I did 5 miles for you. So it ran a little bit into the lake, but if Cedarburg were closer to the lake, this is again where you do the polygon. Sometimes too, by the way, before I go too far, is we'll figure out, well, geez, when I look at that data, I really wish I would have done further distance or a lesser distance. Don't be shy in asking for another report. We really don't mind doing that. So again, this is a mailing list. Those of you that have used Excel, that's the document that you get. Here's just some of the information along the top here. So this is actually, I think, where the ethnicity is listed is like 30-something. What you'll get before all this is all the mailing information. Those of us that have done bulk mailings, you have to have at least 200 pieces, and there's a code for this and that. That's all at the very beginning. It'll tell you a lot about the household, but here you got marital status, the age of the, in the case of Randy and I, of the husband, the major household. Children in household, here's where we got the ages, 0 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 17. So again, those of you with the school, here's your preschool. But don't forget the youth group kids, because we really need to take care of our youth group kids right now, especially all that's going on. Some like to look at income. I left it there, but quite truthfully, I take it out when I give it to pastors, because I don't want anyone to get hung up by that. But just so you know, a lot of times you can tell from a person's home what income bracket they might be, but the dollars aren't what's important. It's more about what is the need and how can we serve. It tells you if they own or rent, level of college, if at all. We'll get into that with reports. How long they've lived in your neighborhood. If you remember a few minutes ago, I referenced they may know you're a church, but they may not know you're a school. Here is why. If they've lived only, a short time, these are all longer. We're pretty stable in Cedarburg. There's not too much new housing left over. But these folks here may not know First Emmanuel's a school. First Emmanuel is set into a neighborhood. We're not on a main thoroughfare. We're by the high school in Cedarburg. But if your ministry is set back in a neighborhood like ours, people may drive right around you and may not even know, unless you have your steeple up, that you're a church. But if they've never been in your facility, they may not know that you're a school as well. Size of the household. I mentioned before the Hmong families. Sometimes when you see that, or Asian, you'll see a much larger number. That's because there's multiple generations there. Sometimes even aunts and uncles. Mosaic group. So earlier I referenced the infograph. So that's where we take all the data, pictures and the like, and we give you each mosaic group for each household. So this group, they're between 35 and 44. There's 4 people in their household. F22 is probably about my age or a little bit younger, and they're a German makeup. So this content and all of the other, just so you know too, is U.S. Census data. So it's self-reported. The unknown, in some cases with some of the information, is they may not have wanted to share, or in the case of this last census, again, COVID messed up our census. We all know that. But that was the first year that the census, you could do it in paper form or you could do it in digital form. So sometimes when you see unknown in the reports or this, it's because someone probably wasn't sure what they should put down. No big deal. Muslim people, bunch of unknown, German and English. So it's really, really interesting to look at your database or your Excel file and see this. So Randy, do you remember how many in that 5-mile radius? How many households?
Must have been about 9,000.
Yeah. So again, the content is very robust. When you're strategizing, first, what are you going to do with it? And then how much of this information? If you're doing it for the school purposes, you're going to look at this kind of information. If you're going to reach out to a new ethnic group that you know moved into a certain part of your neighborhood, you may look at that far last column. How long they've lived here? This is your welcome wagon area. Yes, ma'am.
So we've got Pullman, which is north of La Crosse.
Mhm.
We've got a community, Trumpelow, we've got a community, Galesville. So would we look at each community individually instead of saying 10 miles? Would you want zip code then?
I think what we did, and I worked with Dr. Metter on that, I think we ran some of each.
Okay.
So it depends, and again, you tell us what you want. If you want more than one, it's not a big deal.
I know they were looking at planning a church there.
Mhm.
Well, the church kind of was already there because we ended up with Gift of Grace.
Right, right.
CMC turning LCMS. But anyway, so yeah. But we're looking at a school now, so it's a little different look.
And in that case, that church has a building that has space, but it's not visible, I think, if I remember right.
Well, they're in a warehouse. No, they don't have space. They're in a warehouse.
Okay.
Yeah. But, yeah, it's a long story. But anyway, so we're trying to figure out where to go.
Mhm. And again, in the case of these reports or the mailing list, don't feel that once we send the report to you, it's kind of like we step away. If you want your district vice president to sit with you, or you and pastor, or you and your committee, we do that all the time. We love to do that. I always say I'm a numbers nerd. I am. Randy will tell you that. But this stuff excites me because I love to find out what you want to do, what new thing you might want to do, or things you're already doing that you want to enhance. But then how does this serve you?
You say this is an Excel, right?
Correct.
When you send it, are we allowed to manipulate it?
Yes.
We can filter and sort?
Absolutely.
If we want to just go to people with children or, okay.
Right.
We can do that.
Right. And I've had congregations that didn't have a lot of support or knowledge of how to do that data sort. So what we're talking about here is, so if a congregation just wanted to know the households that have kids, they would go to the children in household and they would want the fields that say present. And there's a way in Excel to do that data sort. Now, if you or others in your ministry don't know how to do that, again, the district vice president can assist you with that. And what they probably do is build the report with those specifics. Other questions? Okay. Oop. I'm not used to having to hold on to this thing, so apologize. I've got to keep coming back for this. So, how do we use some of these mailing lists? When was the last time you sent out a postcard or a mailing to your congregation? You know, here's where we might have to do more than one thing. There's some of us that kind of sort of like mail, but not really, and we look at it, and when we walk in the back door, it may go in the recycle bin. There's others that like to read every piece of mail. They actually know when the mailman or the mail lady goes by, and at 2:30, they're going to go out and get their mail, and they're going to want to know what pastor is sending in his newsletter. My point in saying all this is sometimes when you look at your demographic, you know, you might have to do multiple things. Send a postcard and put a poster up. Sounds silly, but in your laundromat, where the single moms, single dads, people lower income levels might do their laundry. To the libraries, to the grocery stores. If you have events and those folks gave you on that QR code, we talked about that early on, if they gave you that email address or cell phone number. You're sending them an email, or you're pushing out a text or a document that has your event listed on it. Again, we talked about the welcome wagon. A new home development. I've had a few congregations, and I think Holman might be one of those, where they knew that a development had been underway for a while, but it's just about done. We had a new congregation, a church plant that initially started in Wanakee, and now it's in Westfield, Wisconsin, which is the Madison area. And it was a brand new area, but because it was so brand new, it wasn't even listed in the census information because the people didn't live there when the census data went out, or the census paperwork or digital thing went out. So there's all kinds of ways you can send out information using that mailing list. Again, talk to your district vice president. Okay, again, I talked about strategizing with congregations. I absolutely love going at night and talking to congregations. So where's your vision? What's going on? What do you see, or what would you like to see your ministry do in the future? Obviously, pastor's a big part of this. We as lay leaders, I'm not a called worker, but what is the congregation's pastor and board, council, whatever you call them, what are you working on? Here's again where LCEF can assist. What's your niche? What do you like to do? I talked about the food pantry. There's so many congregations that are getting into that. What else might you do? Is it that adding that shower? Or, food banks are great, but we have congregations now that are doing clothing banks because the people in the poverty level can barely keep their kids in clothes because they're growing so fast. Again, sometimes it's just a meeting on what do these demographic reports look like. Here's some folks in the district and at LCEF corporate. Again, district vice presidents are people like me that are boots in the ground. We're employed by LCEF, but we're in your district to serve. So please call people like TJ. And there's a bunch of the others around the country that would love to come and visit with you. Ministry Solutions is the entity within our organization where they help congregations with various stewardship initiatives, a campaign or other things like that. Sometimes it's actual strategy where it's a tool called Clarity. We used to call it Vision Path. Some of the pastors in the room and the teachers may have heard of that before. Ministry Clarity is what that's called now. Again, this piece here kind of goes into these various areas. So take a look at this. Go to lcef.org to see more. And then Real Estate Solutions is the newer thing. Again, we have a broker. His name's Tom Campbell. Ma'am, I don't remember your name, that you said you got a congregation back. Tom Campbell is the entity. If you want, I can get his contact information to you. Where I've walked with Tom is we had a congregation, newer congregation, that really built up a wonderful campus. And they had all the basement kind of sectioned off for Sunday school rooms and rooms for the youth. But there was no real flow. It was kind of like a maze down there. What Tom did is he went in and showed them some different ways they could use their facility for outreach, but then also just to get people in your building for things like Rotary Club, Lion Club. It's a great way to get some of your local community people in your facility. It doesn't hurt to also share your worship times with those folks either. But this is the main area of what we get to do, and again, that's on that burgundy flyer. So here's our districts. And that hyperlink, again, if you download these slides, this is a hyperlink. If you click this and you go to Indiana, you're going to see TJ's name there. Now, I'm in South Wisconsin, but because I recently was asked to take another role at corporate, you're going to see the gentleman from Northern Illinois District. My whole point here is click on this and go to your district, and your district vice president's contact information will come up. You'll get their name, you'll get their phone number, you might get a cell number, and you'll get an email address. So again, those of you that don't know your district vice president, that is the URL you want to look at. I'm sorry, I keep walking in front of you. So just to kind of not end, but we in the German faith, the Lutheran Germans, I don't want to end and just be all business. If you really look at that and read that, as you study your ministry, what are some of the things you might want to change? The screen that I'm showing right now is a church that lists their German services and when they're offered 1 week or 2 weeks a year. Just think about what we put out on our message boards or in print. Because, again, people aren't going to walk in our doors. They're going to look at your website, your church sign, and you really need to know your neighbors. So I'm going to stop talking there. I'm going to take questions. Yes, ma'am.
So did the real estate solutions area, do they help churches, newer churches, find property? In the
Yes,
right
they could
spot?
help you. He's a broker. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So who's our vice president? If you're not anymore, who is?
Well, I could still help you, but Joe Willman, and again, he's in Northern Illinois District. I can get you his information, but I've been still running demographic reports. I can do them again. Those of you that have run reports before, and this was in the poll, how have you used them? Is there something that I didn't list that you do that you'd like to share?
I'd say don't ignore the data that you get or try to outsmart it. So we had a failed multi-site plant because there wasn't a critical mass of current members that lived in the neighborhood we were targeting.
Mm-hmm.
We found another area where almost a fourth of our members were living, but it was about 13 miles from our church. Planted a multi-site there. It is exploding.
Mm-hmm.
So know your neighborhood, know where your members are, because you need a critical mass of your members. Otherwise, we found out the hard way, we're not native to that neighborhood. And, we can swoop in on a Sunday morning and whatever and come back, but we're not them. That's a whole different thing. It's a learning curve.
One thing I talked with a congregation one time was they had something similar to that. It was a newer neighborhood. They did have some members that were there, but they did an old-fashioned canvas. Do you all know what a canvas is? We actually walk the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And I always say, those of you that live there, you're taking pastor right with you. And he's walking and giving things. Not so much that, you're saying, come on Sunday to church, but here's our information. If you don't have a church family, please come and know. And they're going to say, well, I know you, and this is your pastor. It's name and face recognition when your members live in that neighborhood because they know where he lives, but they don't know you. You're introducing pastor. You're telling them about your ministry. You see tricycles in the driveway. You know it's a family with children that might need a school or a Sunday school or VBS or whatever you might do for kids or for young families. Good point. Thank you.
So we're going to be doing a Genesis study. Will that stuff be as part of that study?
Is that with Dr. Metter? Yeah. Yeah, because he already has demographics.
Okay.
TJ, did you have any way that you've used the demographics that I didn't list?
I've had a lot of congregations specifically use the mailing list to try to increase the reach of the school with some real success.
Mm-hmm.
They've targeted specific neighborhoods or even areas where maybe there were some things happening in the public school system. But don't want to open too big of a can of worms, but
COVID related, might I say?
But that and some other things in recent years.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was a very targeted approach where we actually sat down, did the polygon to target a specific area, and it was very successful.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
So these reports seem to be a snapshot in time. is there a longitudinal aspect that can be done too of this set of young children is growing or the aging
Right.
population is growing? That didn't really show on there.
No, and I probably should have listed, I had one to bring reports for you all, but I had a suitcase to pack and paper. But what the reports will tell, especially in the quick insight, and then the other reports do it as well, it will go from 10 years back, current, and 10 years forward, and even beyond. I think it's a second census reporting. So you'll see some new trends. Yes, yes. The thing is with the quick insight, I like to have you start just with that, because if you get everything right away, it becomes information overload. And your eyes roll up in your head and say, I'll get to this, and I never will. And quick insight is a great report to look at, the infographics and the mailing list. Sit with your district vice president to really help you explain it as well. Pastor.
Another concept, too, which is kind of reverse, and we in the Missouri Synod are not good at this, is we're good at inviting people to the church. What about the church going out? So you find your demographics and, oh, these 3 member families live in this neighborhood where nobody else goes to our church or any other church.
Mm-hmm.
So now what do? How can you have like block parties or invite your neighbors over, create a small group, whatever. Just be creative and do it that way, and pretty soon you're going to start to see some of that.
Absolutely.
That fruit of that result.
And there's a statistic, and no disrespect, I'm married to a pastor, but many times new people will come into church when your members invite them versus knowing that Pastor Jim Smith is your pastor. He's a great pastor, no disrespect whatsoever, but if your neighbor invites them, or for the school, my kids go to school, you might want to check it out. We have a great principal. I can make an introduction. It's just a known statistic that more people come to a congregation, and many of them, I believe, probably at some point were in church, but for whatever reason over time fell away. Those of us in our part of the country, I listed that the ethnic area, you saw German. In our areas, I usually remind pastors, if it says German, there's a very good chance they're Lutheran of whatever flavor. Mustard seed in the heart.
We did it. We lived in Iowa before we moved to Wisconsin, and we adopted an apartment complex.
There you go.
The people they weren't Lutheran, they were Christian, the managers were, and so they allowed us to do
Mm-hmm.
this, but we cooked food, took it, tables and chairs and crock pots and everything to the apartment complex twice a month, and we served a meal. And we had coloring books for the kids and arch books and all that stuff, and we had story time. None of them ever darkened our doorway. However, Pastor married a couple there. We baptized some babies. He did counseling. There was an evergreen tree. He took a folding chair and he counseled people behind the evergreen tree.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. You've got to go. Sometimes you've got to go
Mm-hmm.
out. And we found this apartment complex through a prayer walk.
There you go.
Yeah.
And I think, if you do the outside worship or whatever with your school, invite the community to those. Your neighbors that don't have children, that's what I miss most. Our kids are almost 38 and 36. I miss walking the hallways and, seeing the fellow parents. Our kids are, we have grandchildren now, so it's a different stage of life. But to be back in the school would be fun. And, to have the opportunity to say, here's why we brought our kids here. I think you would like it as well, is a great thing. When you do an event, keep inviting. Keep inviting, because from one year to the next, they may not be able to make it, but that third year, and they know you have your picnic in August before school starts, or your VBS in June, or whenever you might do those kinds of events. Keep inviting. And it can be that flyer, or it can be the poster in the grocery store, in the library, or whatever. But say, neighbors welcome. No need to RSVP. But then, have some giveaways and just say, if you ever need anything, here's pastor's card. Always make sure your phone number, pastor's information is available, because in our world right now, a lot of things are going wrong. And unfortunately, people have to go through some things, and that mustard seed needs to grow, and sometimes it's through some hardship. But it's a great time to support a family or an individual. And they have seen pastor or the principal or the wonderful lady that always answers the telephone for the office. And these are the faces that people might reach out to. Yes, ma'am.
We've used mailing lists to advertise our Christmas Day dinner. And it's very interesting because we get a lot of volunteers from outside the church that come that want to serve on Christmas Day. But we've learned over time they're there to serve, but they're there because many of them are also in need.
Alone.
But they don't want to come to partake of the meal as just someone partaking of the meal. So, and many of them do genuinely want to serve as well. But we have found we make connections with the volunteers that come to serve as well as with those who come to serve. And we go out and have been able to drive people there and advertise. But, and again, not always do they darken our door. Some do. Some come to worship, etc. But Pastor always has the time for the children. We have children's activities. We do a lot of clothing giveaway during that time because it's Christmas, it's December. And it has been a wonderful outreach to the community that's pretty urban.
Okay. Fabulous.
Yeah, so
Thank
mailing
you.
list have helped us with that.
Good. Other questions? Things that you wanted to hear that maybe I didn't touch on? All right. I can't stress this enough. Please, please, please do talk to your district vice president. There's our toll-free number, our website. You'll see more information. That's my email address. You can download the presentation to take more notes and to share it with others. Please do share it with others in your congregation. And if there's anything I or anyone else from LCEF can ever do for you, please don't hesitate to ask. Actually, our president and CEO is right outside the walkway here. He's handing out these little cards for the giveaway. So please do let us know how we might serve you and your congregation or ministry. God bless.
Very good. Thank you.